and welcome to the course Augmenting Design Thinking with Human Computer Interaction. So, in today's lecture, we will see the design thinking applications and we'll also see a few case studies of how this can be applied in real life problems. So, we have seen in the previous few lectures the design thinking process, the few steps that we have seen, and we also saw the three important pillars, which is the desirability, feasibility, and viability. So, now the design thinking also looks at what is the desirability from the human point of view. So, if you take this example in front of us of the cars that we use for our daily commute, so not really pointing at any particular brand or company, but just taking for the sake of discussing this particular topic. So, now for one person, a desirable car may be say Audi, but when they look at the feasibility aspect, which involves, for example, the maintenance of the car, the upkeep, the availability of parts, or the fuel consumption, the output of the car. So, considering those, maybe another car, for example, the Honda may be more appropriate. But if we look at other factors, then maybe a much smaller car, for example, a Maruti Alto may be better because the purpose of the car is to take one from point A to point B. So, if we consider these 3 points, then we may see that one probably is better than the other, or one may be better suited to a particular condition or a situation. So, the design thinking process that we have seen and that we will see in the future slides as well. So, it is, as we have discussed, it is used for solving some complex problems. Now, it is not just a method which can be useful for designers, but people who are not from the background of design, they can also apply these principles and the whole process for solving certain problems and different challenges that people face. So, we have seen these three lenses of design thinking, and where the three meet, that is the sweet spot, that is the goal that we want to achieve. So, by tweaking all our three aspects, desirability, feasibility, and viability, we get that goal which is better suited, like we discussed, in a particular situation. So, now we can also think of it like the radio buttons that we move to adjust the sound, or the transistor for the bass, and when we have them aligned in a perfect position, so they will be better suited, for example, for our earphones, or for example our indoor room, or for playing in a party. So, all these settings will change according to the need and the context. So, similarly, these three will need to slightly change depending on the context and what we are trying to solve, which problem we are looking to solve. So, when we are applying these principles and we are also looking at these three aspects particularly, then there are a few questions that we may ask that will give us more clarity, and they will help us also identify whether there are some gaps which are still there which need to be addressed, and if we go about it, then our solution probably will fit all these three perfectly. So, for desirability, we can ask questions like, does this idea suit the needs of our users, and what do people desire? So, now some of the needs that we will put down or we have identified, they are coming straight from the people. When we are talking with them, we used different methods earlier, empathy, where we discussed with them, observed them, and some of these ideas or these problems or challenges we may also notice as a designer people going through. So, now adding our own insight into it, and maybe thinking of the problem not just from the point of view of what the user has told us, but applying our own observation as well. Will that be something that will be desirable by the people or not? So, that is a question that may come up. We will also see an example of this particular point, that how it may play out in real life situation. Then feasibility, we can ask questions like, how can we use technology to deliver this idea in a better or less expensive way, and is it technically possible to build the solution? So, these questions will help us check for any discrepancies or any way that can deliver the solution much more efficiently. The next is viability, where we may ask how can we build a sustainable business model around this idea, and can the company profit from the solution, because we are also looking at the company not going into loss. So we have to balance all these three, and like I had mentioned, that all three of them, they act like three legs of a stool. So even if one is missing, or if one is disbalanced, then the entire goal sort of loses its purpose. Now, there are certain issues that go beyond these issues that we have already mentioned, including the desirability, viability, and also our feasibility. So, these are problems that, you know, we may face as a consumer, or as a designer, as a citizen. So, the products that we use, the products that we are coming in contact with, so now they may have certain other impacts on us, on our environment. So some of those we need to consider, because when we are looking at the viability, feasibility aspect, so we have to also take care of these additional points. So now environmental impact, we have to be mindful that the digital devices or solutions that we are creating, they ultimately lead to e-waste. So now the products, for example, a cell phone is so easily accessible, it is priced modestly. We can get here in our country a phone ranging from say 1,000 rupees to maybe a lakh rupees. So now anyone belonging from, any social background, they can purchase a cell phone. So the connectivity has increased, but also the purchase has increased. The amount of the connectivity that has happened with the help of these phones, so the number of consumers have increased. Every few years or maybe even months, people change their phones, they go for a better model, for a more expensive or a more better camera or other features. So the previous phone goes to waste, and where all these land up is in the landfills. And of course the chemicals like mercury, lead, all these poisonous chemicals, so they enter into the earth's surface and go into the groundwater, and they spread toxicity, and they of course harm the environment. So that is one issue that we have to take care of. So there are few of these companies, some examples are there where the product's life cycle, when it is over, so after replacing a few items from it or a few components, how can this same product still keep on functioning for much longer? So there are certain these conscious brands that are coming up which do not promote purchasing new products, but replacing a few parts so that the same old product can be used. The next is the energy consumption. So the energy that is required to manufacture and operate and charge all these smart devices across the world, so it utilizes a lot of energy. So that is another point that we have to take care of. This also leads to environmental degradation. The next main point is societal impact. So on one hand, these devices have brought us together, so they have connected people and the distance has decreased. Even if physical distance is more, but still people are more accessible, we are in touch with them, we can connect with our loved ones on a daily basis. But on the other hand, it has also created a digital divide. So there is still a strata of society in our country and worldwide as well who cannot probably afford these devices. So we especially experienced this during COVID-19, when all the education had to move on to the online platform. So there were many schools and colleges even where the students did not have access to these digital devices. Now how would they study when all the schools, colleges have shut down, and the only means of learning is through the screen, through the computer? So that is one area which is impacted by the digital devices, that there is no means of access for everybody, at least at this particular stage. So that is one disadvantage, especially in the remote learning environments. And the third is the health impact. So like similar to the environmental impact, wherein the chemicals are leaching into the earth and going to the groundwater. So there are other physical health impacts as well, that since we are glued to mostly most of the times to our devices, whether computer or phone or other devices as well. So we face a lot of ergonomic discomfort, a lot of neck pain, eye strain, headaches. And the other point here is also of the pressure that it creates on one to be in contact all the time. So all these social media, so one has to maintain a presence there, and one has to be constantly present in order to be visible. So it creates a lot of pressure. Looking at somebody else's picture perfect life can create anxiety in people and create a lot of stress. So that is another downside of the these technology. And so we need to be mindful that how are we using this to our advantage, and so that comes from our own understanding and what is the purpose and goal that we are creating these for. So to get started with design thinking, uh, one should keep in mind the following main points. Some of them we have discussed briefly in the previous lectures, and we will continue to look at them more in detail in the future lectures as well, with some examples and case studies also. So we have seen focus on the user, where the user is the main person, the user centric design, like we have discussed. Then empathy, to understand the perspective of the user and what is their context, what is their background, because we have seen that how the context becomes very important when we are designing in terms of our country or the European counterpart, how the product will change, the user experience will also be expected to be different. And then employ convergent and divergent thinking, so wherein the we generate more examples, more ideas with the help of divergent thinking, where we are diverging our thinking, we're looking at numbers or quantity more than quality, and then we are converging to take few of those ideas to finalization. So we have seen in the previous lecture also some of the methods like the double diamond technique. We just saw that briefly, but we will be taking these points up also again in the future. So the next point here, which also needs to be taken into account, is the research and market competition or competitors, because as a this is a crucial step in the design or business strategy. So if there is an independent designer, or there is entrepreneur, or there is a design firm, so they all need to know that what is existing in the market and what is the competition, what does it look like, because if they have to enter this field, so they need to have some kind of a leverage over the other competition. So they have to have an understanding of the existing before they can dive into it. So a few of these things is to understand the market landscape. When it comes to that, there are several points that one has to look into. So for example, identify the trends. So what are the current trends in the market? We know that trends keep on changing, and the preferences of people keep on changing depending on the context and need and many other factors. So what are these trends, what are the ongoing trends, so that we when we launch our product into the market, it is not something which is primitive, but something which is more future oriented and which will also cater to the needs, and keeping in mind the 3 points that we have seen above, the research and market competitors. Also a target audience, so who are we catering to? So their demographic, their needs, of course that becomes important, their preferences and their buying behaviors, their it also covers a part of the psychology, that what colors tempt them, what colors they prefer or do not prefer. So all of those become very important when it comes to the audience that we are trying to cater to. Then the same point, we have market size and growth, that what is the potential of the growth of what we are proposing. So is it something that is a one time wonder product which is just going to be purchased by people once and then they will never go back to it, or is it something that will go on for years and maybe generations, and maybe with slight tweaking it will just go on to version 2.0 and so on and so forth. So this is also something that the designer needs to keep in mind. Now when it comes to analyzing the competitors, so again there are a few points like who are the competitors. So now there can be competitors who are directly associated with our product or business, or who are indirectly associated. So the direct ones will be who have a similar product or service that we are offering, they have the same thing to offer, and the indirect will be where there is a slight deviation from what we are coming up with. So understanding uh, these competitors, that uh, what is their consumer base like, for example, and how do we also increase our consumer base, so it will help in understanding that. Then doing our SWOT analysis, which is very important anyhow, even for our own product, which is the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. So what are these strengths of the opponent, all these 4 points, so that will help us also understand that where there is a weakness, so how can we leverage on their weakness. So these are some business strategies and marketing strategies that are used, and which are very important for, especially for new businesses, independent business owners. Coming back to design aspect, the product comparison also becomes very important. So what is it that the competitor is providing or supplying, and how is our product, important or better or improved version than the competitor's product, and why would the consumer switch to our product that we are offering. Then the another important aspect, which is highly important and which also lets us know, we also do that on a daily basis, like when we are ordering food, for example, on Zomato or any other such service. So we look at the number of stars that people have left behind. So if some burger, for example, has 5 stars, the other has 3 stars, so the 5 stars will sort of indicate to us that it is probably better, it tastes better, or there is something, as compared to 3 star, there is something improved in this one, so we go for that. So similarly, the customer reviews are important, which can tell us that where is the product lacking or where is the service lacking. Now, the customer support also in itself is a very important aspect of any business, because if the customer support is active and it is able to cater to the query of the user instantly and find a solution, so of course it keeps the consumer base begins to trust the business. So that is another aspect, including the social media analysis, because nowadays all of the products, all of these reviews, everything is available online. People are discussing products and people and all sorts of things, on this online platform. So it becomes important to keep an eye out for these. At the same time, it is also important to identify the market gaps and opportunities. So what are the unmet needs? And this takes us back to the first point of the user and the empathy, that we are empathizing with the user to find. So are there any unmet needs? What is it that the other product is not providing to the consumer, and how that need can be addressed by our solution? uh, Also to see the innovation opportunities, that where can we have an edge, where can we use technology for our benefit and have an edge over the other products or competitions in the market. At the same time, there may be some barriers to entry, that is also on the side of the business side, that there have to be certain licenses, certain registrations that one needs to take care of. And lastly, but again very important, is the continuous monitoring part, that we are continuously monitoring. We are not just sitting comfortably after launching a product, but we have to, like we saw in the product development also, we have to keep on iterating it and taking the feedback, come back to the board and solve that problem. So similarly here as well, in the market and research area as well, we have to keep on coming back, stay updated, that what is the feedback, what is the challenges, so that we are able to adapt and we are able to innovate at the same time. So this is very important. So just coming up with the design or the product is not important, but also how it is launched and how it is doing in the market is equally important. Then we have the ambiguity rule. So now ambiguity, as the name suggests, is uncertainty or something which is not very clear. So this is used to explore uh, ideas, a lot of ideas. So now when we embrace uncertainty, when we are not sure, when we are not coming up with just one final product and we are unsure in the process, so that allows us to have a lot of different ideas. It allows us to not have any sort of a personal bias towards a particular solution, but have an open mind to explore that what is the best fit in terms of the solution that we are providing. So this encourages the designers to stay open to different interpretations and possibilities, so that we are not fixated on a certain concept from the beginning to the end. The exploration of ideas is another aspect of this, that designers can now explore a broader range of ideas and approaches. So sometimes when we are set in a certain way and we take just one approach, it may not work for different problems. So different challenges may need a different approach. So this also, when we are ambiguous, so this also allows us to explore and experiment with several approaches and then see that which approach works best to find the solution for us. And this kind of openness that we include in our process is also allows for more creativity and more innovation, and we get multiple perspectives when we view it from multiple perspectives. So we are able to understand the flaws or understand wherein we have to go in a little bit more to sort it out. Then the iterative learning. So we have already seen that how iterations are so important. Iterating is a process which is going back and forth and not, just fixating on something. So now this ambiguity rule also allows us to keep on the iterative process and learning. So where we understand through cycles of exploring, experimentation and developing prototypes, and then getting the feedback that, how do we improve this further, how this uh, going back into the chain, maybe step number 2 or step number 3, and then coming back out, that how this can really refine the final output. So when designers engage with ambiguous situations, so they gather insights that gradually clarify the problem and guide them towards the solutions that will actually be goal oriented or which will be solution oriented. Also, this being ambiguous or this particular rule also allows that we do not have any premature conclusions. So we are not in a hurry to or in a rush to just come up with the final solution. So it helps us avoid this conclusion. And this is especially important because some solution that we may have come up with, it may not fully address the problem, but we may feel that it does. But since we are now maintaining an ambiguous mindset, so now we will get to know that no, there are still certain aspects that can be further worked upon. Some iterations are still probably required for it to come up as a more innovative product that we are aiming for it to be. The next is our tangibility rule. So this is the principle which is associated with design thinking and prototyping, and which emphasizes the importance of making ideas tangible early in the design process. So now this rule, where it is important and where it really helps the designer, is when they can transform their abstract concepts that they have, which may be just a few ideas in their mind or which they don't know how they will shape up. So this helps convert them into a visible form. So now these forms that we have transformed these ideas into, now we can sort of interact with them, we can maybe touch them, we can explore them. So that allows us to get a feel of that idea which is probably right now currently in the air, which we don't know how it will come up or how will it appear once it is ready. So some of the aspects of this particular rule are that making ideas concrete. So this helps, or we can say it also advocates for turning the ideas that we have into tangible prototypes or models as quickly as possible. So this could be a digital product or a physical product. So making wireframes or some quick sketches to put down our idea. So even in that manner it is still a prototype wherein we are able to see that what is it that we are visualizing. For example, if you're discussing smartphone healthcare application, then where do we want the support to appear, where do we want the phone number to appear, just as an example. So if we put it down quickly, so it will help us see what is it that we are visualizing in our mind. Of course, we can always go back and forth and iterate further, but this just converts that intangible into tangible and gives us a little bit better idea of the expected outcome or the direction in which we are moving further. So this also enhances communication. So they help communicate ideas more effectively to team members. So if we have 6 team members, I have a certain idea and I'm having difficulty in communicating with my team members, they are unable to understand me. If I quickly jot it down, just make a quick illustration, so that helps them understand it. Or if I make a quick model with paper, so it helps them get an idea of what is going on in my mind. So also stakeholders, if we want to show something to the stakeholders who are involved. So for example, if you go back to the example we discussed in the earlier classes of the water transportation truck. So if we are telling them how it will be done, so that is one thing. But if we, for example, take a small model of the village and we show with the example of small toys that how the truck will come and people will take water, so that visual translation will help them understand that what exactly it is to be expected. So now when this idea is made visible or it is touchable, so depending on the kind of product we are aiming at, so it becomes easier to understand it and also critique it and improve it. So all these three aspects then can be looked into. And finally, we have adaptable to change. So analyze the recent trends and the changes. So how the ideas we are coming up with, the solutions we are coming up with, we have to always be ready to accept the changes, and how do we adapt to what is going on around us. And like we saw in the previous point, research, the market and competitors. So here also we saw that how do we have to keep on going on with an open mind. We have to adapt to the market requirements. And so this needs to be also kept in mind, that with technology, with the advent of AI or some other technology, plus the needs of people, so we have to keep on ensuring that we are open to changes and we are adapting them into our process seamlessly. Now let us see a case study. So now this is case study of a peeler. This is an OXO peeler, OXO. And this example I am giving just so we are able to tie up all that we have seen in the few lectures, starting from empathy to the design process of it, and also what we recently just saw, the research of the competitors and market and other aspects. So this particular peeler was designed by American Sam Farber. So now how he came across this particular gap or this particular need, because like we have seen, everything starts from the need and it has to be a viable need which really matters. So now Sam was on a vacation with his wife. They were vacationing in France. So their story is actually available online. You can Google also to get more details. I will just summarize it. So his wife Betsy, and she was preparing apple tart, and to prepare the apple tart she had to peel the apples. And what we see on the right side of the screen, so the image we see on the right side, that stainless steel, that is the peeler she was using to peel. This is the kind of peeler that were available at that time in 90s, like late 1980s. So this is the kind of peeler wherein, and it's much different from what we have now. So the handle also you can see that it is a smooth stainless steel handle, and the peeler itself is like a very, like sort of a fin wheel sort of a thing. So, and this Betsy, Sam's wife, had arthritis in her hands. So she was having especially a lot of difficulty in actually peeling the apples with this peeler. So that is where the idea came to the mind of Sam Farber, that why can we not have a better peeler? So, so then after a extensive search and a lot of experimentation and getting in touch with several companies, so they came up with this particular peeler on the left side of the screen that you can see. So if the top part you see where the it's actually peeling, that is the kind of peeler that we see around us nowadays as well. And the handle is the one of the most important finds, which is a comfortable handle. It was designed to, you know, have a little fat body so that it would fit into the hands easily, as compared to that little thin diameter metal rod we see on the predecessor. And also there were these fins. So now this material itself is very interesting because they found a polymer. This is sort of a rubber which was not at that time seen in any of the household, especially in the kitchen area. So then they, which is called Santoprene. So this is sort of a plastic and a rubber, so a polymer sort of a material. So that is what they used. And once he came back, Sam Farber, with his idea of creating a peeler, so he came and contacted the company called Smart Design. So this was a New York based company, and they did a lot of trials and errors. They traveled to a lot of places to get the prototype made, and finally they came up with this particular design. And in 1990, they had developed a range of these products, so not just one product, but around 15-20 products with the similar handle. So here you can see on the left side of the screen that how many iterations they had to make in order to come up with the final design of the handle. On the right, you can see a few products from their range. So now they have over 1,000 different products that they offer, the company OXO offers. And since 1994 or 1995, the products are also displayed in MoMA, which is the Museum of Modern Art. So that was the importance of this particular handle or this particular peeler, that it became quickly a very popular product to be used by people all around. And so this shows now Sam Farber, if he had not wondered that why are there no good peelers in the market, if he had not done that little research of his, which was specifically at that time to just help out his wife who had arthritis, but that made him question that what about other people? There may be others also who may be struggling with this particular peeler. Maybe they're elderly, or maybe they have certain kind of, an issue with their skills, motor skills, or other motor functions. So that research that he did led to the finding that there was this big gap in the market, which was lacking a product which would give a comfortable grip. Now, in addition to this rubber, it also has some fins on the where it is to be held with, and we see these fins a lot more in the products that we see around us, and probably this is where it came up with. So these are these raised rubber fins. When we press them, so they press under the pressure. So those are the fins. So those were put in so that depending on the kind of pressure one is placing on the peeler, so they will, under the weight, they will sort of squish and will give a comfortable grip. And when the person releases the pressure, it will give it the form, they will spring back and it will give it the form the peeler currently has. So now this is I think a fine example of how a peeler which was initially designed for somebody with a sort of a disability, which was not allowing them to use the tool as efficiently as maybe a person without arthritis. So, but this tool became really liked and preferred by people all over the country, all over the world, who did not have any of the disability also. So this shows us that if we are creating a product which maybe is targeted for particular need, but it can cater to a larger number of people on a global level, and how it can become universally more acceptable. So, we will end today's lecture here, and I will see you all in the next class. Thank you.